We're bunched over there. Okay, just introduce Raywin. I'm just going to take you through the whole area of the personalization stuff. We mentioned it earlier on, and so we'll run this until about 25 past the hour. So I think we're okay for time. Best of luck.
Okay. So hi everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Raywin McKenna, and I'm a project manager at Terminalfour. I'm going to warn you before I go too far that most of my slides are big images with text at the bottom. And I wasn't as considerate as Hugh to give up my lunchtime and redo my slides. So you might miss text, but hopefully the pictures will speak for the text. So what I'm going to be talking about today is just to give a brief description of what is personalization, the different types of personalization on websites, the problems you can solve with personalization, and then work through two examples of two of our clients who have implemented personalization on their sites recently, Aer Lingus and Specsavers. So the first, what is strictly not personalization, but some people might consider it so, is better termed user interface customization. An example from one of our clients here is Worthing Borough Council, and they allow users of their site to customize the right-hand column, to add widgets, remove widgets, and control what content they see when they next go back to the site. This is all done through cookies and ASP, and they can, as far as I know, they can also possibly change, bring in their own gadgets if they want to. What is more strictly known as personalization is where the content on the page changes depending on the person viewing the page. And the important distinction here is that the content that you're viewing is driven by the content author. So the person actually writing the content is the person deciding who should see this content, versus customization where it's the person viewing the site deciding it. So the example here is Aer Lingus. Depending on who you are and where you are going to see different information on their homepage, different advertisements or services that they offer. So the different types of personalization. The first is what's termed implicit personalization. The best example of this is Amazon.com, probably. You're all familiar with it. So depending on if you tell Amazon that you particularly like a product, they'll recommend similar products, or they'll look at what people like you also liked, so they'll use what they term collaborative. Also clickstream analysis, so watching where you click to see what other products you might like. The other type is explicit. Explicit is where the information isn't coming, it's not as it's not following where you click and what you view. It's more based on characteristics of you. So where are you geographically? Or login based. So you log into a site and it has particular profile information about you and what you see. It can also be campaign based. So for example, if you send out a newsletter and in it you have a link to view undergraduate information, users click that link, you know that they're interested in undergraduate information, so the rest of your site can then be tailored. When they go to your homepage, show a banner about undergraduates and how great your undergrad program is, instead of a more generic banner. Problems you can solve with personalization. This here is an example of homepages talking to too many audiences. So they're trying to pack information onto the homepage for anyone who could possibly want to visit the site to make sure that no one misses their piece. The other opposite end of the scale is where messaging is too broad. So the information on the homepage, there's very little information and more just links as to who you might be to help you find what you need. International audiences, trying to tailor your site for all the different countries who might be visiting your site. So depending on what country someone's coming from, they may be very interested in very different services that you provide. Personalization allows you to do targeted marketing and advertising. So you know specifically who this person is, where they're coming from, and so you can give them adverts for services that you provide that are relevant to that particular user and increase your sales. Compelling content, this is an example of the Specsavers intranet. I'll be talking about more, but on the Specsavers intranet, each of these different boxes changes depending on who you are. So when you log into the site, the news on the top right in your country will show news about your country. So if you log in from the Dublin store, you're going to see very different news to if you log in from the London store. So the idea is that you're seeing content that's very relevant to you. So the first example to walk you through is Aer Lingus. Aer Lingus until recently used to use Geoip. For those of you who don't know what that is, when you visited their homepage, it would look at what the IP address of your PC was, and it would guess what country you were in, and so display information based on that. They had a number of problems with this. A simple example, anyone from Dublin who works in Dell was picked up as coming from America. So every time they went to the Aer Lingus website, they were given all these amazing deals to fly from America to Ireland. Okay, so what they've decided to do now, instead of using Geoip, is that when you first visit the site, it brings up a simple splash page, asks you to enter what country you're in, what your airport is, and what your language is. This is then saved in a cookie, so the next time you go back to the site, you don't have to do it again. The key thing there is also that the user is able to change their location. So once you get onto the site, you are actually able to change it, change your language. So this is their homepage, which is driven by Site Manager. Depending on what country, airport, language you've chosen, all the different pieces of content displayed on that page will differ. So the example here was from Austria in German. So the adverts here are specifically flying from Austria to Dublin, the different services that they will provide in Austria. So the way that this is done in Site Manager is they've got, you can see here, they're not even using Site Manager 7. They've got a different structure for each country. So on the left, you'll see the first bit is global. So there's certain pieces of pages which are the same on every single page. They've got all these different content fragments which are then divided out in their structure. So for example, the sliders, they're all stored in a specific section, depending on what country they're relevant for. So all the Austrian sliders are stored in that particular section. The German sliders might be stored somewhere else. They've also then got some pieces of content which are language specific, for example, the footer of the page. So you'll see then that under a country, it's then broken down further into languages, and they store the content for their footer in those particular languages. It was their choice as to what content was translated and what wasn't, and if they do want to change it in the future, they can actually make everything multi-language for each country. So what happens then, all of these pieces of content fragments are added to all of their sections. When you go to the home page pulls together all of the content fragments onto one page and makes up a page for you. The second example is Specsavers, their intranet. This hasn't launched yet. So I'm going to show you a few pieces and screenshots, but obviously because it's an intranet, we can't show you too much. But I'm going to show you we've implemented very similar functionality in our sample site that comes shipped with Site Manager, so you'll be able to see it there. So in this example, the user is asked to log into the site. So they give a username and password. In the case of Specsavers, it authenticates directly against LDAP so that we know exactly who that user is once they log in. In the case of the sample site, just for ease of the sample data, it actually authenticates using the Site Manager web service against the Site Manager users. So it's a Site Manager user logging into the site. There's also nothing to stop you putting a single sign-on in front of a login so that the user doesn't even have to log in at all. As soon as they go to the page, it logs them in automatically, and you know who they are. Once logged in, you then know exactly who that user is, And the content on that page can be tailored specifically for that user. So it could link into identity management software to find out who that user is. It could link into LDAP. In the case of the sample site, it uses site manager groups to figure out who the user is. So in the example of Specsavers, the news on the right-hand side changes, the notice board changes. So if you're in a particular office, you have your notice board. I think another thing that's key in Specsavers is that they understand that a lot of their workers, while they might be working from Guernsey one day, they might travel to Southampton office the next day. When you're in Southampton, you might want to see the notice board for Southampton so you know what's on the menu. So it actually allows them to change their location as well. The other key thing here is that once you log into the site, the links on the left-hand side are going to change depending on who you are and what you're allowed to see. So it's not only targeting content, but it's restricting it on what you're allowed to see. The way this is done in Site Manager is that when you enable access control in Site Manager, for any section, there'll be a new tab, and on that tab, you'll be able to, your authors will be able to identify exactly who is allowed to see this content. Now, in this example here, this is from our sample site, so it's listing a list of groups. But essentially, you are able to customize exactly what is displayed there. You might have radio buttons for, is it an undergrad or a postgrad? You might have a drop-down box. You can choose exactly what all the fields here are. Geoip tomorrow is going to go into a whole lot more detail about how to set it up in Site Manager, how to configure it. We're not going to be doing that today, but if you're interested, you can find out more tomorrow. Right, I'm now holding my breath, and I'm going to give you a real quick demo, just so you believe me that it does actually work. And as I say, Geoip's going to go into all the Site Manager configuration tomorrow, and I'm going to just show you the live site.
And just while you're loading that up, it's interesting that you can actually cover both restricting sections and parts of the page, and we're going to cover that tomorrow as well. So it's not just sort of limiting a whole section as being password protected, but actually, if you're this person, you see this bit as Raymond displayed. Yeah.
Okay. So in the example of our sample site, what we've chosen to do is to take the departments area and put access control on that. And depending on what user you are, what groups you're in, you'll see different information. So if I click on departments, T. Okay, so this user, when they log in, is seeing the links for professional services, project support, and then human resources, because everyone gets to see that. And then when Tina logs in, she's in training and documentation, and that's all out of the box Site Manager. Okay. I'm going to hand you over now. Are there any initial questions?
We can take one there at the back. Yeah. I think Ingrid's running up with a microphone there for you.
Sorry, that's a new feature of 7, is it?
It is. It's from 707, and then the sample data is in 708.
Max.
Good exercise.
Be kind to me, Max.
I can see a lot of us are going to be sitting around the bar this evening going, how? Could you give us,
Magic.
like, is there any chance you could give us a tiny peek to some idea of what's going on here?
Okay, essentially, the protected area is, in this case, we've chosen to do PHP, but you can do any dynamic language you choose to. And then in Site Manager, you're able to configure the code that goes around links at the tops of pages, those sorts of things that says, who is this user? Am I allowed to see this link? So each, for example, the link menu, each link is surrounded in code to say, am I allowed to see this link or not? And it's highly completely configurable, whatever language P.
But I think what Ray was saying, if you want to corner someone in the bar, it's probably her or Dermot.
No, Dermot there. Dermot, corner Dermot.
Yeah. He will impart information for pints.
Okay. That'd be free to you. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. I'd like to introduce Nivo Burns. He's one of our more, recent project managers that joined us. He's going to take us through some of the things that are in the new SEO reporting.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nivo Byrne. I'm a project manager at Terminalfour. I'm one of the newbies that was referred to earlier on. I started 3 months ago. Today I'm going to be demonstrating the SEO reporting tool in Site Manager. So maybe if we just start with a brief overview of how search engines actually rank sites when it comes to keywords. Metadata keywords historically used to be a factor when ranking a website, but in actual fact Google no longer even takes this into consideration. That's not to say that you shouldn't use metadata keywords, because they're quite important, for example, for internal search, or if Google changes its algorithm. What Google does look at is keywords within content. So it's important for you to contain keywords within, for example, your page title, your URL, your body text, your H1, your H2, your header tags. And those page elements are what the SEO functionality within Site Manager would check against. There are lots of ways to optimize your site for search in Site Manager. So today we're going to cover the reporting tool that lets you validate individual pages and an entire channel for SEO performance. This reporting tool became available in version 7, general availability, and a version 2 is now available in release 8, which is the version that I'll be demonstrating today. For a version 3 of the reporting tool, we're hoping to get some feedback today and tomorrow based on our discussions here. So any ideas that could go into a third version of the reporting tool are greatly appreciated. Now I'm going to switch over to a live demo as well here. Do we have Site Manager open here? Okay. Right. Okay. So I'm just going to expand the site hierarchy. If we go into reports and SEO report, this is where you will actually get your options to run the different reports. As you can see, there are 2 different reports, reporting on a channel and reporting on a individual section. The individual section report would match a specific SEO key phrase against a page, and it actually outputs the report on the screen, so it doesn't save it down to a database. So that would be good for ad hoc analysis if you were developing a web page and you wanted to check its SEO performance. The channel report, which is probably of more interest, runs the report on the entire channel. You can run it immediately or schedule it, so you may want to set up a schedule to run a report on a nightly or a weekly basis, depending on how often you update your content. This report here is saved down to the database, so you can always refer to it in this area here, previously run reports. That will save up to 10 of your most recent reports. Before I actually show you a report, we'll just have a look at the SEO configuration, so the report output will make a bit more sense. Basically here on the left, you can see that Site Manager comes with a series of SEO plugins. These correspond to different page elements. So you can see, for example, you've got your title tag, your image alt tag, your header tags here, your body text. So what Site Manager does is actually check for SEO key phrases in those individual page elements. The weighting scale here goes from 1 to 10. So if you wanted, for example, to place more importance on a key phrase being found within the title tag, for example, you could change this here from 1 to, let's say, 4 or 5. The weighting scale is between 1 and 10, but Site Manager doesn't actually enforce that. It's just a recommended weighting scale. You can disable or enable any of these checkers. If you didn't want to run a checker against H4 tags, for example, you just uncheck here, and you can always add that back in at a later stage. If you have developed your own plugins, which should be in Java, if I'm not wrong, you can add your plugins here. So if we go now and have a look at a report, which I've run earlier, have a look in here. You can see that the report will give you back an overall average page score, so in this case of 28.1%, and then a breakdown per section with percentages per section of how well they ranked against the key phrases in those particular plugins that we've just seen, those particular page elements. You can output this report here to CSV. If you wanted to run further statistical analysis in Excel, for example, you have the option to output to CSV. So if you wanted, you can follow any of these links in here and get more of a breakdown, what we call the data summary, which will give you the SEO score for the external area in this case. And then it lists out the different page elements and how they ranked. So for example, you can see that the H1 tag got a 100% rating because obviously the SEO key phrase was found within the H1 tag here. You've got the option here to modify your content or directly edit it, or just preview if you wanted to see which page it's referring to. In the extended data table, you can actually see the snippet of text here with your keyword. So in this case, the keyword was sample. So you can see at a glance where your keyword was used or not in some cases. And it'll tell you here that, for example, the keyword sample was found within the first 100 words of the content of that particular page. Okay, so if we go now to the site structure, here we have the SEO column, which has 5 different color schemes associated with it. We have the grey color, which means that a report hasn't been run against that particular area. We've got a white color, which is a 0 to 25% rating. Then we've got red, which is 25 to 50%. Followed by amber, 50% to 75%, and green, which you don't actually see here, but there is a green colour scheme, which would be anything over 75%. So obviously what you're aiming for is green. If you follow, you click through on the colour scheme here, that will bring you back to the detailed section report, actually the one that we've just seen for that particular section. In terms of adding SEO key phrases, if you right click on say the section and modify section, you can see here that you have the ability to add in key phrases here. They can be as many as you like, just as long as they're separated by a comma, and you can include more than one word, so you could have higher education or United Kingdom, United States. And in terms of who can actually add the key phrases, anyone who can modify the section name, so from moderator level upwards, would have the rights to modify and edit key phrases. And then just, I think there's one last thing in terms of once you've added key phrases, they are automatically inherited by the child sections, unless you then go in and add a particular key phrase for the child section itself. So just want to see something here. Yeah, I think one last thing I'm going to try, I know it's a live demo so it may not work, but we have in the hardware section a SEO score of 72.7%. So what I'm going to do is attempt to, it actually looks green, but that's amber. If we go in and modify content, I'm going to modify this content in here. Okay, and go down here, and we can see that, for example, discs, which would be one of the SEO key phrases, that was listed for this particular area. You can see that that's the H4 heading. So I'm going to try and change that to a H3 heading and see if it makes any difference, because obviously keywords that are found in a H3 heading would hold more weight than a keyword that would be found in a H4 heading. So I'll put that into H3, and I know that it takes one of the page elements that we saw that's taken into consideration is whether keywords exist within bold tags. So I'm going to make that bold. If I can find the bold up here. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to update that now. I'm going to attempt to run the report again and see whether this has made any difference. So if we go back into SEO reports, I'm going to run the report on the channel site, see if this works. It may not work, so it might need to be approved. Okay, let's have a look and see. Okay, no, it worked. It worked. We've got a green. So I think that's might be a good note to end the presentation on. Any questions or feedback? Greatly appreciated.
Dan.
Where does that key phrase get stored when you're modifying a section?
Is it in the section? Is it in the section meta?
Right.
Paul? Key phrases, where are they stored for the SEO?
They're stored alongside the standard section information in the section info table in the database.
I'll help you, Dan. Any other quick questions? No? Any? It's the question was who's used it.
Who sees it?
Who sees it?
Yeah, can you make that word away?
Yeah, you can actually. If you go down, you can actually hide it completely. In the UI, if you go down, you can actually turn it off completely. It's a configurable, Paul, so you can turn it off entirely for people who don't want to see it.
Basically, I don't want admin to see it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Well, I don't actually think it can be turned off completely. A user can choose to hide it. I don't think you can disable it completely for all users.
Something we could do. We actually got some feedback before. It was only available for admins and moderators, and some feedback from some clients was what they'd like to make it available to the content authors themselves, the contributors, so they could actually make sure that they were putting in the correct phrases when they author the content. So yeah, we can certainly look at being able to make it configurable.
So we'll take feedback on it. Check. I can't remember what's changed from the last version.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to ask how this percentage is calculated. The SEO percentage, when we can see like 70% or how this is calculated?
Okay, I mean,
I think what it does is it gets. If Stephen is around, maybe, or Paul might be answering.
He's hiding in the corner over there.
But ultimately,
I wrote it.
I think it's at a high level. It basically looks at is each score a win or a lot, like is it yes or a no, and then multiplies it out by the weighting. I think Paul is that.
Well, it's not necessarily actually that simple. Depending on the test that is being done, like in the case of the body text, I think in order to get 100% on.
You can just move it closer to your mouth there, Paul. It's a bit. Okay, sorry. In order to get 100% on the body text thing, it needs to show, I think it is 3 times to get 100% on that. So it looks to see that piece of text more than once within the page. So depending on the number of times it's seen will affect the actual score of that test. And then the result on that test, how it works is that depending on the weighting of each test, generally you'll say that the body text test is worth less than, say, the H1. So you'll weight them differently, and the scores will then be affected and totted up based on the actual score of that test and the weighting that is given to it in the configuration.
This is an area where you'll notice that the hieroglyphics in the middle of the screen here. This is where we've actually written our own specific checks based on what we know that the industry is looking for at the moment. This is changing. This is changing all the time. You can actually write your own plugins. You can write your own SEO checking routines, assigning the percentages as the way you want to do. There's a whole plugin architecture around this, so you can develop your own. You know, Google or Yahoo might change the way they do things. The idea is this is configurable, so we can match what they're doing.
And these little pieces here, if you are interested, we don't mind sharing little bits of code behind these checks. So if you want to take that and customize it and say, you know, well, if they mention your name, they get extra bonus points or something, you know.
You actually turn this into whatever you want. If you want to check for swear words, you can do that if you want.
Yeah.
But our goal is to actually work with clients and with partners who may want to extend this kind of technology. There's other partners out there, or people who just specialize in doing SEO checking, and we basically provide a framework there for them to write their own specific checks and be able to use those. So this is kind of this is a very much a changing area as we move on. Any other queries? Max? Dan.
Not a shout. If a page is constructed using things like a related content branch object in order to relate content from all the sections, does it? Oh, the mic's arrived. Sorry, I carried on shouting. What I was asking was, if a page is constructed using related content branch objects or such like, as quite a number of our pages are, would the SEO check apply to the page, or does it apply just to the specific content within that section?
As in, like, is it based on the page after it's been built, or just based on the content that's there? Yeah. I'll let Paul answer that.
It's based on the page and what appears on the page in preview.
It's just what the search engine would see.
Okay.
So we actually build a preview page first, then pass it through the checker.
Okay, great. That's good.
That's what you'd want, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think he's happy, David.
He's just trying to catch us out.
Wasn't expecting that.
Good. Thank you for that question.
Make sure you got that on camera.
Anything else? So we move on to the last part of the section.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dave.
Thank you.
And last up before the break, we have Raphael.
So, hello everybody, my name is Raphael, I'm a project manager with Terminalfour, and today I will talk to you about variation impact analysis, also known as A/B testing. So, what is A/B testing? A/B testing allows you to test different variation of your content to find out which one is the most efficient and then implement the right variation. So this variation can be a slight difference in text, color, design, or even a different structure. It's really up to you. What I want to show you today is how you can use Site Manager to create the variations, add the code, and measure the impact, and then implement the most successful variation on your website. So the example I will be demonstrating today is very simple, but it's just a way to introduce everybody to the topic. So what we will be doing today is that we would like to find out which is the best way to word a link to download a PDF. So we will be using a piece of code on a landing page to randomly show users version A or version B of a piece of content. Each of these versions, A or B, shows a slightly different label for our PDF link. And then we'll be looking into looking at the results in Google Analytics. So the first step will be to set up our structure in Site Manager. So first we need a section. The one we'll be using is called Marketing Campaign. It's our landing page. This is the section that user will actually be seeing when accessing your page. And we have our two hidden subsections in which the content will actually be added. There is a nice screenshot of the structure here. So this is our main landing page, and the two variations of the content will sit in these two hidden sections. Then the second step would be to set the landing page, so it works how we want. So we added a piece of code into the marketing campaign section to randomly display the content from the two hidden subsections, white paper 1 and white paper 2. So in that example, it will be purely random, but if you want, you could also set the piece of code. So it would display, for instance, version A to 10% of users and version B to 90% of users, or any other setup you would like to test. And whatever the version of content the user actually sees, it would always be the same URL. And the code we use is a server-side A/B testing code. It's been added in a template, in a code-only template. So we've been using PHP for this one, but you could use JSP or any other server-side code. So now that we are set, we are ready to move to step 3, which are the variations of the content. So, sorry, excuse me. We have created our content for option A in white paper 1 section. This is this one here. You can see we have our content, a breadcrumb, title, and our link here. But the link is reading, click here to download the white paper for people who can't see it from the back of the room. And then we need to populate content in option in the second subsection as well. So for instance, what you could do here is take your first content, duplicate the content, and then slightly amend it to create the option B of the content. Now, what we are looking for is the best option, which is the best link to get user to make user clicking. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, yes, good. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry, it's Irish water.
It's very good. It's good for what I have. Okay. Yes, you are trying to find out which is the best link to make people actually click on the link. So we will be using Google Analytics to find out. So in that example, we will be using the event tracking facility in Google Analytics, but you could as well do this with goal tracking. So we need to do some more settings to have this working in Google Analytics. So we set up a Google Analytics account. Sorry. That's really appropriate, I'm sorry. And then we updated the media formatter so that the media could have an on-click attribute. And then we added that on-click attribute to the PDF links. So if you can see the bottom of the slide, we have our two on-click attributes. They are quite similar, except for the end of it here. Option A would have white paper A as a label for the event, and option B would have white paper B. So I was hoping I could show you how it looks.
You're fine for time, right?
Yeah.
We've got 15 minutes.
I was looking for my link, actually. So this is our landing page. You can see the URL here. And obviously, this is the version A. Now, if I refresh the page, I will see, hopefully, another version of the content. Yes, here we go. So, no, it shouldn't look exactly like this. It should read something slightly different, but you can see at least that you have two different versions of the content. And different users would see a different version of the content, whether A or B. And then that's all the setup. Now we are all set up for our testing. So once this is finished, you can allow some time for your users to visit the website and myself to drink. Sorry. And after a couple, I would say a couple of days or maybe a few weeks, you can start seeing the results. You can log into your Google Analytics interface. Here we are in the event tracking section, and we are looking for the results for the labels. So you can see here that we have our two guys, white paper A and white paper B. Against them, figures. These figures actually are the number of times the link has been clicked on. Sorry. So you can see that option A works really better than option B. It's a real life example, of course. So as a conclusion, I'd just like to mention that you can do A/B testing on any aspect of the page of the content, like the copy, color, or images, for instance, or button to click on. But it's more efficient when done with a single variable variation. It means that the two different versions should be different only by one aspect. If they are two different, you could still find out which one works best, but you wouldn't know why. So when it comes to implement the best solution, you could really not get all the benefits out of the testing. Sorry. And also, what I have demonstrated today was a very simple way of doing A/B testing, but there are a lot of tools out there to do this. So you could just, for instance, Google A/B testing tools and find more about this. Okay, I'm finished. Sorry.